a good friend and great colleague, Deb Binczewski, president of Uprise Consulting, and Deb is a Excel guru. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her run with her presentation.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I can't see you because my slide deck's up, but I would like to have this interactive. So if you have questions, please just let us know and we can go ahead and stop and repeat or go through the information. Today, we're going to take a look at VLOOKUPs. So this is a really powerful tool to merge data and take a look at it. I had a colleague of mine gave her something to do, and so she was looking things up one after the other, and there's probably about 200 line items. And so when I saw that, I showed her how to do VLOOKUP and was able to populate those 200 line items instead of 3 or 4 hours in about 5 minutes. So very powerful tool. We'll take a look at some pivot tables, some introductory ones, and then we'll show you concatenation, and then as time allows, any other additional type formatting and different tips and tricks. Right, I'm going to go flip over to Excel. Okay, so I tried to do this with patient access, but I didn't have any reports. So
we can't see it yet, Deb.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I'm just still on. Yeah.
Let me see. I'm trying to see how I can share everything on this one. So I can just toggle between files.
Okay. We still are looking at your agenda.
Okay. I don't think we're going to be able to talk. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to toggle between files. So, so we'll work it.
Okay.
All right. So here's some data here. This happens to be CPT and HCPC codes, which I'm sure hopefully everybody's familiar with. These are when you're registering or doing pre-auth, you use a lot of these codes, and these are the procedure names. I am going to things you're not, can you see, did I switch screens on you, or are you seeing the first one I have?
Still seeing the HCPC.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can share my whole.
Okay.
My whole screen, because I do need to talk back and forth, and I'm just not sure how to do it on Zoom. Okay, let me improvise here. So give me a second. I am going to copy this one over to the sheet, and then we can toggle on the sheet.
Okay.
Always a workaround. We can figure it out. Okay. So again, this is a list of CPT codes with different procedure names. When we take a look at pricing or do different things, a lot of times we'll pull things in from Addendum B. So this sheet over here is Medicare's outpatient prospective payment system, Addendum B. And what this does is it takes all of our HCPC codes, our CPT codes, here's the descriptions, and it tells us what the price it is, so what they'll pay for it. So we take a look at this a lot of times when we're looking at pricing. This over here, this is SI is a status indicator that goes ahead and lets us know how Medicare pays for those. So probably not in your guys' area, but in revenue integrity and billing, their area, they look at this a lot. But this is a good example for VLOOKUP. We will always want to start in a new column. So you're going to start your formula where you would like it. And so in here, I'm going to add our OPPS addendum B price. Okay. And I'm really anal retentive, so I do this kind of stuff. I'll make sure it does. Okay, so we're going to start our formula here. The easiest way to start it is if you just go and click, you can go into formulas up top here. But you can also just click on the F sub X. And if you don't have it here, which I don't on this one, just type in VLOOKUP and hit go. And it'll bring it up for you. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. I'll pull this out of the way. So when we're taking a look at VLOOKUP, the first thing it is what do you want to look up? So your lookup value. In this example, we'll use our HCPC code. The thing is when you're doing these, you want to make sure that whatever you're looking up is going to be at the front of your data. So in this case, we're going to look it up. Just click in here, and you can go ahead and click over here, and that's going to populate that. The next thing we're going to do is our table or array that I had pulled in. So that's going to be our OPPS addendum B. So I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to click on sheet 2. You can also, if it's a different document like this originally was, you could go over to that document and click on it. All right. The next part is your table or your array, and that's basically your table. Again, whatever information you want, it has to start with whatever the lookup value is, because Excel is going to match the lookup value you put in with the table or array that we're going to do. So I'm just going to go over here, and I want the payment rate. And take a little step back here. The next one is the column or index, and that is just telling Excel what field you want to put into your to utilize in what you're looking up. And so in this case, we start at the left-hand side and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our payment rate is in the 6th column. So we'll remember that, because once we click off our table array, we'll be on a different sheet again. So I'm just going to go over here to this. And then I'm going to go to the end of the document, and I just hit my down arrow and down arrow, and it brought me to the document. This part here is critical. It gives us our range, which is from A5 to F1763. We could have named this, but I didn't, because I wanted to show you. What we need to do is make this what's called absolute. So we don't want, as we're copying down our formulas, we don't want our table or array to move down, because what'll happen is, on line 500, it's going to say A500 to A22. And I ended up spending a whole 4th of July because my analyst at the time forgot to put her absolutes in. And when I was getting a document ready for the state of California, I was just cross-referencing it and realized she did it and had to redo it. So very critical. The best way to do it is if you use your F4, your function 4 key, it will toggle. So you notice it put $ in front, and that's absolute. So what it's saying now, when we copy the formula down, keep column A, row 5, and column F, row 17,563 the same. So as you copy your formulas down, it will never change. You can toggle this, and as you get more advanced and used to the lookups and different formulas, it will give you where you can keep your rows the same, but your columns will fluctuate. Toggle again, it's the columns will stay the same, the rows will fluctuate. And then toggle back to original, and so we'll go ahead and keep it there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the column index. So when I said we wanted to calculate it because it goes right into where we're putting our formula. So we calculated over, it was the 6th column over. So I'm going to put in 6. And then the last thing is the lookup range. And this lookup range, if you want a one-on-one relationship, So then you're going to want to have type in false. If you want where it's a range, then you would just either type in true or leave it blank. So if you think about when you were in school, you got an A, B, C, or D, you could put a grading scale together and you would have a range that you want to give an A to or a B to, and you could set that up. So that's an example of when you would want a range versus one-on-one. And I just noticed something on this. So this is good. I'll show you guys something else. I just hit OK. And so it'll come up. And so what it's done, it's taking this CPT code 10060, and I'm just going to copy it. And I'm going to just find it in this. And if we come over here, we can see that it's $180 and 58 cents. And if we go back here, we have that. So it works. It's always a good idea to go ahead and validate your formulas when you're taking a look at these. And then you can copy it down. And that's why it's all the same number or CPT code. Okay, so it'll go ahead and copy it down. I'll show it to you again, but let's clean up our data a little bit. We have CPT 1060 5 times, and we don't want multiple of those. We want them just to have a single amount. So I'm going to get rid of our formula here. And I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to go to data and remove duplicates. And here it's saying remove, these all have to be alignment or it's considered a duplicate. I'm just going to do the CPT code because as I looked at this, there's some information that we don't need. So I'm going to go OK on this. And so what it did is it removed 661 duplicates and gave me, so now we know what our value is. So that's one really good way as you're working with data, particularly if it's repetitive, to get a clean list on that. All right, let's go through VLOOKUP again. And I just used it, so it's here on my favorites or the ones I've used recently. So we'll go again. So you'll want the lookup value is what you want to look up. Our table or our array. So we're going to click on sheet 2 and we'll go back up.
Oh, this is not what I wanted.
Hi, can you guys hear me? It looks like I'm getting muted and unmuted.
We can hear you, Deb.
Okay, perfect.
I just had to mute. Somebody had somebody's background noise was on.
Oh, okay. It was just showing mute and I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm muted or not. Nope, you're good. You're good. So then we'll go ahead and click over here. Remember, it's 6. And then I'm just going to go down to the end. I want to make it absolute. So I'm going to put my F4 in there. Column or index is 6. And our range lookup, we want a one-on-one relationship. And then I like to just go down to the corner here and then double click and it'll bring everything in on there. If let's say that this was 576. Notice when it is there, it has this NA. And so what that's telling you is that this 576 is not in our table or array. So if you see those, that's what's going on. The other thing that you might see when you're doing these is when you do your VLOOKUP, it's going to do like hashtag value. So you'll see this error in there. And if that happens to you, what is going on is that your column, so what you're looking up, and the data source or your table, what you're looking up or matching is in a different format. So one might be in text and one might be in numeric. And to fix that, the easiest way to do that, if you see those, is just to click on this here, go to your data tab, and then just do text to columns and just do the function wizard all the way through. And then hit finish. See what happened? It doesn't recognize it because I've changed how this is structured. So I'm just going to go over here to this one here, do the same thing, data tab, text to columns, just bring it through. And now when we go back, they're all there again. So if you see an error and you're like, what's going on with it? It's a really big troubleshooting because these have to be in the same format or you'll get those errors. Okay, let's try bringing something else in. So, sorry about that. Let's do our status indicator. And I always bring those in mind just because they're meaningful to me, but it'll just be a good example for you guys. So again, we'll start the same thing. We'll go to our F sub X, our formula. We'll have the lookup. And what are we going to look up? It's our CPT code. Our table or our array, click back down here, go to here. And again, you can name this table just by going up top here and typing in table or whatever you want to do. But now we're going to do the status indicator. So it's column 1, 2, 3. And we could have, I'm going to cancel out of here because when I showed you that, it didn't like it. We look up again. We're going to look up our value. Here's our table or our array. One, two, three. I'll just do this over to here and down. Again, I want to make sure it's absolute. Actually, I won't do absolute on this one. And just so you guys can see what will happen. We want column 3 and we want a one-on-one relationship. And it gave us status indicator T. And if we go ahead and bring this down, as we get further down you'll see that you're going to start getting some weird stuff in here, these NAs, because it's not finding it. If we take a look here, we see it's now at A 2239 to C19. So it's moving everything down. That's why we're getting these error messages in here. Okay, questions on this? One thing that you can do, and I kind of alluded to it, if once you get familiar with this and have practiced on it, you can go ahead and just make one formula. So in this case here, if I take a look at my formula here, and I want to copy it from column C to column D, we have this as absolute, so it's not going to change. But what would happen is it's going to move it. If I move it over, it's going to give me an NA because it's looking at this here procedure name. So what we can do is we can make this, we want the column to stay the same, but we want the row to go down. We can do our absolute. You can either type in a $sign or you can toggle. but we only want the column to stay the same. And by doing that, we can now copy it over. It'll give the same information. We can just go up here, change it to 3, and now we have our status indicators. And we can copy it down. Okay, questions? If not, let me move over to pivot tables.
If anybody has questions and you don't want to ask, you can put it in the chat as well.
Whoopsie. Didn't mean to stop sharing here. Okay. So here we have, and this might be a little more valuable, or what you guys might take a look at. So here we have our patients, and they have an encounter type, which is appointments, and it's for 3 days, the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st. The department that they went to, so CT imaging, ultrasound, radiology, that they arrived. Here's their total charges. And then this is some other information. So let's go ahead and put a pivot table. Your boss wants you to let him or her know how many patients were seen in each department on those dates. So we'll go ahead and do it in a pivot table. When you're doing pivot tables, it's really important to make sure that your data is nice and tight. And what I mean by that is we don't have here an extra column in here. It's not going to be able to read it. So we want to make sure that there's no additional columns and there's no additional rows in it. When we do a pivot table, we just insert and pivot table. It's going to ask you if you want it in a new workbook or in an existing worksheet. This one we're going to do in a new workbook, but if we had multiple pivot tables on a single worksheet, we would do existing worksheet and just show where we want it to go. All right, when you do your pivot tables, it will look like this. This is where your pivot table will end up. And on the right-hand side here are all of the columns that we used over here. So they're all over here. And so we can have Excel sum them up. So we want to see, let's go back over here. We want to see by department how many patients we had for each date. Let's find our department. Here's our department. And you can either double click and Excel will try to figure out where it goes, or you can drag it down. So the filters here means we would have filters up top here. I could put that filter there and then just show one department at a time. Over here is your column. So that's the data that's going to be the columns. Here's your rows. That'll be the rows. And the value, and when I was learning pivot tables, this was what I struggled with. If I want to sum things up, I always wanted to put them in the column because that's where I wanted it to go. And then I would have all the information along. So in that case, we want to put it down in the values. So let's go ahead and put our departments under our rows. And so we can see we have all of our labs here. And we want it by date. There is our date. There's our date. So we're going to put our date on our columns. So you can see 29, 30, 31, and then grand total. And we wanted the number of patients. So here's our patients, and I'm just going to drag my patients and put the value down. So now we can tell by department how many patients we have. When I mentioned the department, I'm going to just move this up here. You can see the filter now. Here's your department. And you could just say, maybe you wanted just to see the cancer center. And then it'll filter it to here. So I'm going to move this back down to the rows. And now I have to go to my row tables and re-engage everything. All right. So really quick, straightforward pivot table. I'll do a couple more, but I want to stop there and see if there's any questions.
I don't see any.
Okay. So I'll set up a new pivot table and then I'll show you where you can move things around. Okay, so we'll start again. We'll do insert pivot table. I'm going to do it on a new sheet. And on this case, we want to see by department what the revenue was by the date. So we'll go ahead and bring our department down. And then we'll bring our date. See, because I double clicked on it, it clicked on the rows, but we don't want it on the rows. We want it on the columns. And then we want our total amount. I'm going to drag this down here. And so now we have our total revenue that was posted for these departments for that date. I'm just doing this quickly, but there's a way to do it in there too. Okay, so it shows it there. Now your boss comes to you and says, wow, that's great, but really the revenue is great, but how many patients is that revenue? So you say, okay, I can do this. So now we have to identify what would consist as one patient, and that would be our patient. So now what we can do is go ahead and just drag this down. And typically you want your count first. And to move them, you can just drag them down. And notice Excel, because there wasn't really a dollar value, it was counting the patients here. And then it was giving you the sum amount. So interesting, we had 5 patients at the cancer lab with no charges on it, but they arrived and were seen. So when you see that, it'll always give you your count and it will always give you your amount. If you want to change this, you can just do your drop down and you could change the field settings and you can change the value settings. So when we come up here, we can have a sum, we can do average, we can do account, min, max, product. So there's various things you can do with those. Pivot tables are fun. The best thing to do is just play around with them. I just finished a project that it was too complex for a pivot table. So I did a lot of advanced formulas, which we won't get into on this class. But this is great just to really quickly sum up data and a lot of data at one time. Any questions on pivot tables or, I mean, that was a very, very high level for that.
We've got a quiet crowd today. They're enthralled.
Okay. They're all trying to eat their lunch.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's let me go back to this data point. Let's show you guys concatenate. And there's a couple ways to do it. I'm just going to insert some rows here. And I'm sorry, I should have made this bigger earlier. I didn't even think about it. Hopefully you could see my screen before. So what concatenation does is it allows you to merge cells into one cell. So let's say, for example, we want to have the patient name or number. And let's see, is there and the encounter type. And I don't know if you guys use filters or not, but they're very handy and you get them by just going to data filter. And you can do a lot of things with filters. The best thing is if you're looking through a lot of data and you know exactly what you want, you can type it in here. It'll take you right to it. If you're working with filters and you're not finding things again, you can go up here to clear filters and it'll bring you back to where you are. All right, let's talk about concatenate. Bring up my function wizard, type in concatenate. I'm going to hit go and hopefully it will bring it up. Of course it doesn't. So I'm going to cheat. So if you do this, it'll bring it up here. And so now it's bringing me here where I would just type it in, which I know how to do, but you can just go back into your function wizard, hit your F sub X, and then it's going to bring your text up. So what do we want to concatenate? First thing we want to concatenate is the patient. So we'll have patient. And I'm going to want a dash in between the patient and the encounter type. So it's interesting. I was working with someone today on this, and Excel used to require quotes when it's text, and they didn't on their version, but let's try that. So typically we'd put quote, a space, because I don't want it to go, a dash, a space, and close my quote. And then the next thing we want is appointment type. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. See, my version didn't do that. All right, so now I've concatenated in one line. I've merged these two with some additional information. I can copy it down. You can also add text into here. So let's say you wanted, and I'll just make this up. It will make absolutely no sense, but that's okay. So let's say I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go into my formula. So instead of a dash, we want, well, let's just say we'll put in Debbie, right? So I'm putting in quotes because it's text and I want it in text. And I'm going to put a space in there because I want to, if I don't put a space in, it's going to align it right with 1. So put spaces in. And so now we've just added our text in. So in addition with concatenation, merging row or columns together, you can also add text to it to go ahead and do it. Okay, one other thing that I think is very helpful, just as formatting in that, we see that this is all in caps. And let's say we don't want it all in caps. Let's say we want it all in lowercase. We can type in a formula that's equal lower, parentheses. Always start your formulas with that. Click on the cell we want all in lowercase, close our parentheses, and now we can copy this down and everything will be in lowercase. Then on these here, we can, if we wanted the lower to the upper, we can just do equal upper. Click on this, close it, and it'll convert it to upper. There's one other one that you can do, and that's called proper. And that's when you have all of the first letter of each word is a capital. So we can do equal proper. I'll go back to this one and close it. And now you can see the T is lower. It'll copy that down. So those are one if you're working with descriptions and you don't, they're different. I just was part of a system go live and it drives me absolutely crazy when I look at the reports, and depending who put the department name in, it's all caps, it's proper, or it's lowercase. So this is one way you can kind of go through it and clean it up. Other tips and tricks. I taught a accounting for technologists for National University for quite a few years. And we had one person, and I'm just going to make up some numbers here, who had a, that doesn't help me. There we go. Who worked at a temp agency, and she had a bunch of numbers that meant things. But when she did payroll, she only needed the middle ones. So we can go ahead and do what's called left, right, mid. So let's say we have a group of numbers, and is this enough for a phone number? area code. I do. Let's say that we just want the area code or the first three numbers of this. We can do equal left. And you want to click on the cell you're on, and then comma, and how many digits do you want to display? So in this case, we want to display 3. We can go ahead and close our parentheses and enter. So now we've just segregated out the 3. Now let's say we want the last 4 digits. So instead of doing left, we can do right. So equal right. Click on our number again, comma, and then how many digits. So go from the right-hand side back, and we want 4. So we'll close that. And now we have the last 4. So last part, and this is where hopefully she didn't work herself out of a job, but it would take her 3 days to go through everything. And you can imagine data integrity issues. I mean, I don't know how anybody can go through that many numbers and just do the front, the middle. We have one that's called mid. So equal mid. We're going to click on this, and we're going to start. It says start number. So we want to start with a 5, and we'll just do 3. So we want to start on the 5. So 1, 2, 3. So we want to start on the 4th. And then we want to display 3 of them. And so now it's gone through here, and it's taking and just pulling out those mid numbers. So if you work with a lot of numbers and data, you can do that. One thing which I think is very valuable for registration is, and I neglected to make one up, so we'll just make one up now. Let's say our street is 1, 2, 3, 4 Hine Street. San Diego, Cal 92534. And you want to go ahead. So this has come out of your system, and you are asked to separate out. You want Pine Street in one data field or one column, San Diego in another, California in another, and the zip code in another. What we can do on this, the easiest way to do it, and I'm going to just copy this to a new sheet because I want to make sure that it's going to work appropriately. So one of the ways we can do it is we can go into our data tab, and we can do text to columns. That's where we work really quickly through. You have a delimited where Excel will try to figure out what's going on. So if there's like tabs in that, or you can do a fixed width, but let's do delimited. And we're going to hit next. And we want everything that's going to have a space or a comma. Let's just do space. Notice here, San Diego has a line. So this is where it's going to space. So we can correct that. Let's go to the next one. I haven't done this in a while. Usually, so let's go back. We're going to need to do it on the other one. When it's fixed width, you can move the columns around. So I'm going to do next. And now we have these arrows. So I can go ahead and say we want this to be just in front of the P. That way it'll keep everything over. We're going to double click on this one and we'll get rid of it. I'm going to move this one just in front of the S. Double click to get rid of this. We'll move this just in front of the C for California, double click, and then move this in front of the 9. Okay, hit next. It's just asking for general. It tries to figure out what kind it is. And now you've just split this over. We should have not done the street, but anyway, you get the idea. So you can go ahead and take a data string and use those formulas to go ahead and split them out how you need to. All right, we have about 20 minutes left for questions and answers. Is there anything you guys would like to know or have questions about? Or maybe a function that you want to try out or wondering if Excel will do it?
Now's your time, folks. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, I guess we don't. Well, Deb, I really appreciate you taking time today to come out of your busy schedule and teach us intermediate Excel. I learned some things today. I hope everyone else did too.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you asking me to do this. And if I can, be of any help or if anyone has questions, just let me know.
All right. We'll give everybody 30 minutes back in their schedule. All righty. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you.